Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, longtime listener. Be sure to drop a like, hit the subscribe button, and comment below. For those of you familiar with the channel, you're going to notice that this is certainly a change of direction from the kind of content that I usually post, but we're going to give it a shot. This is something that I've been kind of working on lately as a new hobby, I guess we'll call it, and I have landed on a theory that has had tremendous success for me personally and has led to a little bit of winning. So what we are going to talk about is strategic wagering, specifically on NHL games. The first thing that I will say before we get into all of the strategy, etc., is be responsible when betting on sports. That's or gambling in general. Just be responsible. Now, what you can take advantage of in the current environment, if you're in a state where you can use sports books to bet on sports, all of those sports books are competing for business, and they are doing promotions to try and win business, especially new accounts. They want people to set up new accounts and start spending money with them. So they'll do things like, if you bet $5 on any game or any outcome, they will give you, for example, 6 free $50 bets. Now, you bet your $5, whether you win or lose. If you take those 6 free bets and strategically use them on bets that you believe are safe, chances are you're going to win 4 or 5 of those bets. Now, they don't give you the $50, they just give you the winnings. But you might come out of that with $150 or $200 if you're smart about it and you do well. And now all of a sudden you've invested $5 and you have 200. So like already you're way up. And again, it's just taking advantage of the promotion. If they give you free bets, don't bet them on a crazy long shot just because it's free. Use it and get actual money. If you do it on a long shot and win, great, good for you. But again, we want to be strategic here. And the reality is, if they are giving me money and saying, here, go bet this, and we will give you whatever you win, I want to win. Like, I'm not here to win thousands and thousands of dollars and make this a living. I'm just doing this as a hobby. And that's what I assume most people who might be watching this video are probably in the same boat as me. So use those promotions wisely. There's another one where it's like they'll give you a free deposit match. So if you put in up to $500, they will match it. So like, for example, I put in $250. They give me $250, but I have to wager the $250 that they gave me within like 2 weeks. So over the next 2 weeks, I'm looking for strategic bets that I can place. And all that I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm winning as many of those bets as possible. I don't care how much money I win because it's free money already. So if I take that $250 that they gave me and I only turn it into $300, I now have $550 in the account, and I only put $250 of it in there myself. So now I can pull out my $250. I still have $300 to play with. So take advantage of those promotions. And again, be smart about how you use the benefits that they give you from those promos. Now, let's talk about hockey. So hockey is a sport where if you've ever been to a game, it is extremely fast-paced. Teams generally are changing shifts every minute or less, thereabouts, because it is so taxing. Basically, if you're a forward in the league, you're probably spending, just think of it as being at a dead sprint for a minute. You will get tired. I don't care what kind of condition you're in. It is going to be taxing. You can't do that and sustain it for very long. So it is a very high energy sport. And for that reason, you can take advantage of scenarios where teams are not going to be able to perform at their highest energy level for extended periods of time. And the perfect example is a situation where they are playing for the second night in a row. That is the biggest thing that we're looking for starters. You look at the schedule, you see who's playing today, and then you look at the schedule for the next day, and you look and see if there's anybody that's also playing tomorrow or anybody that's playing today that played the night before. Those are the kind of games that we're looking for. We want teams that are playing on 0 days of rest, especially if they're playing against a team that has a day or two of rest. It's a huge advantage, and that's the biggest thing that we're looking for starters. That's our baseline. Next, there are additional factors that we're going to consider, and it's not always that we're going to pick a team to win just because they're playing a team with no rest, but we're going to look at all of these factors, and then we're going to decide accordingly. Okay, do I think they can win this game? Do I think they can cover the spread, etc.? Now, one big factor is who is in goal. Goalies are like the quarterbacks of hockey. So if you have a really good quarterback, you're probably going to be a contender. In hockey, if you have a really good goaltender, you're probably going to be a contender. They are a difference maker in the game. So what we are looking for here is if a team is playing back-to-back, they almost never start the same goalie twice in a row. So if I have a team that played on Thursday and they started their number one goalie and they're playing again on Friday, I am looking hard at that game. I'm probably going to take the other team to at least cover the spread, if not win outright, if they are like an underdog. So that is a huge factor, is who is in goal. But again, it's just a factor. So it might not be that I get exactly what I'm looking for with all of these factors, but man, I'll tell you what, if they all line up, I am absolutely taking advantage. So who's in goal is a big factor. And a lot of times, even if it's a team that is playing for the first game of a back-to-back stretch, you can a lot of times get onto websites and see who is supposed to be in goal that day. It's not always right, but if you can find a game where a team is starting their backup and it's not a very good goalie, you can sometimes take advantage of a front end of a back-to-back because you know the backup is going to be in goal that day. So those are, again, who is in goal is a huge factor when it comes to wagering on NHL games. Now, another big one is whether they're home away and also if they had to travel between games. So, for example, a lot of times in the NHL, if a team like San Jose has to travel all the way from California to play New Jersey, they might play the next day against New York. That way, they're already out on the East Coast. They can get 2 games in 2 days and then head back. So it doesn't cost them as much. They're not gone as long. But again, that's a huge advantage for those teams on the East Coast, especially the team in New York, who gets to play them in that second game of that long road trip across the country. So think about where the game is located. Home ice advantage is big in hockey because, again, you're kind of feeding off the energy of the crowd. If that home team scores first in the tail end of a back-to-back, look out because you're probably going to be picking up a win in that one because the energy all of a sudden changes in the arena, and now that road team has an uphill battle. So, again, think about who's at home, who's away, and if they had to travel between games. Sometimes it might be like San Jose is playing in LA. It's the second night in a row, and they played in San Jose the night before. It's not a long trip to get between those places, but if they're playing 24 hours apart, now they're playing in a road arena, and they had to travel between games. Even though it's a short trip, it's still something that takes logistics. It's stressful, and they're usually not resting as well while they're on the road. So, again, the location of the game and travel in between, another factor. Another factor as far as what happened in the first game is if it's a game that comes down to the wire or goes into overtime, that usually means that the teams involved in that game are probably, making a push toward the end and a little bit of extra effort to try and pick up the victory in that game, and that's a factor. If it's an 8-0 blowout, chances are both teams after a while started to kind of rest their guys because I don't need to bother going all out now especially with my first and second line guys. I'm going to give them a little bit of rest and keep them fresh. And so if there's a game like that, that's a factor to consider. If it's a close game, typically it's a lot more high energy down the stretch. And if it's one that goes to overtime, that's even another factor to consider because, again, rest is crucial, and that's kind of what we're trying to take advantage of here. The last factor that I will mention is just pretty straightforward: win-loss record of the opponents involved in the game. And where I generally use win-loss as far as considering how to wager is if everything else lines up in my favor except for win-loss, and it's a scenario where it's a really good team that is playing for the second night in a row. They'll have their backup goalie in. They're on the road, and they had to travel in between games, but they're the best team in the league playing the worst team in the league. I'm certainly not taking the worst team in the league to win outright, but they're probably at least getting a goal and a half in the spread, and I'll probably jump on that. If they're getting 2.5 because of that win-loss differential, absolutely take advantage because there's a really good chance that they'll cover there, and they might even win outright. It's a longer bet, and it's one that, hey, if you want to throw $1 or $2 down on it, so be it. But again, be strategic about what you're looking for. Consider all of those factors. Again, we're looking for a team that plays for the second night in a row. Ideally, they have their backup in goal, and the other team has their starter in goal. We are looking for somebody, we're considering who's home, who's away. We're considering travel in between those games, and we are considering the win-loss record of the two teams involved. If you do the research and find a team where all of those chips kind of fall in favor of one team, strongly consider putting down a bet on that team. And again, if it's one where you're just not quite sure, but you just want to at least get involved in the action, throw $1 or $2 down on the team that's not playing for the second night in a row, and the odds are still in their favor. Teams that are playing for the second night in a row statistically score like 1/10 of a goal less than usual. So there is like statistical difference in terms of like the mathematics, but that 0.1 of a goal only equates to about a 5% difference in win-loss likelihood. So that's where those other factors come into play. So if we can change that 5% and turn it into more like a 25%, that is a huge advantage. And if you do the research, you will see that the teams that are usually on like the tail end of the back-to-back and all of those other factors kind of going against them, they almost always lose. Almost always. So you can definitely take advantage, but you've got to be strategic. You have to know what you're looking for, and then take each of those factors into consideration. If you're not quite sure, but the team is favored, just take them on the money line. If you're pretty sure and they're favored by a goal and a half, take the spread. If you're really sure and they're the underdog, you might even take the money line on that one because that's a bigger payout. If you're not quite sure but they're the underdog, just take the points on the spread, and you're increasing your odds. And we're not doing this to make thousands and thousands of dollars in one swing. We're talking typically, especially if you're on YouTube getting betting advice, you're probably spending a few bucks betting on games just as like kind of a casual hobby. But if you're strategic about it, it can be one that nets you a little bit of extra spending cash. So I hope that this video is helpful. If you have not done so already, please be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment below, and we will see y'all next time.